Hello and greetings from the Tennessee World Affairs Council. Welcome to Global Nashville with Carl Dean. My name is Liane Henschke, and I'm serving as the Executive Director of the Council. TENWAC is a nonpartisan nonprofit organization dedicated to promoting global literacy and international awareness through four programs that connect Tennessean with the world. Distinguished Speaker Series with 16 luncheons event per year, webinars, Student Leaders Without Borders, and Global Eats. Please check on our website for the events we have this fall 2025, tnwac.org. Today, it is my great pleasure to introduce our distinguished guest, Mrs. Lori Becker. Lori is a president and publisher of the Nashville Business Journal, leading the region's most influential business media company. Lori and Carl will be dialoguing about the growth of Nashville, the attraction of international companies, and the change of the cultural landscape. So, Carl Dean, chairman of the Tennessee World Affairs Council and former mayor of Nashville, will guide the discussion and explore the insights Lori brings from her remarkable career. Carl Dean served as the sixth mayor of Nashville and Davidson County. He was elected in 2007 and re-elected in 2011. Dean first held public office when he was elected as Nashville Public Defender in 1990. He was re-elected in 94 and 98. He served as Metro Law Director from 99 to January 2007, when he resigned to run for the office of mayor. Carl Dean taught at Belmont University and now teaches at Vanderbilt Law School. For our attendees, please use the chat to write your questions. I will now turn it over to Chairman Dean to introduce Mrs. Becker and moderate the discussion. Thank you both, as well as the participants of today's webinar.
Great, thank you. Lori Becker is a leader with a track record of driving growth, innovation, and civic impact. As president and publisher of the Nashville Business Journal, she leads the region's most influential business media company. Under her leadership, the organization has achieved double-digit profit and top-line revenue growth, launched scalable innovations adopted across 45 plus markets, built nationally recognized teams. She's a trusted advisor to business and civic leaders across industries and recognized for shaping Nashville's economy through collaborative, high-impact initiatives. A native of Bowling Green, Kentucky, and graduate of Western Kentucky University, Lori joined the Nashville Business Journal in 2008 after a decade as a reporter with daily newspapers. Lori is a board member and past chair of the March of Dimes of Middle Tennessee, an executive member of Scouting America Middle Tennessee, and a member of the 2019 Class of Leadership Nashville. She and her husband, Michael, live in Franklin with their two children, ages 13 and 11, and two rescue dogs. Lori, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Well, it's great to have you with us. Well, I just want to start out and talk a little bit about you. We've established that you were born and raised in Bowling Green.
Yes, sir.
Great city up the road with the Corvette and many other attractions.
Yes, home to Corvette, home to Fruit of the Loom.
Fruit of the Loom, right next to each other. Yeah. What when you were in high school and as a youngster, what were you interested in?
I was a band kid, so I loved music, played the trumpet, was on the high school newspaper staff, so that sort of launched my journalism career. So those are sort of my two main things that I was into. and just loved writing. That was a big passion of mine.
Okay. And when you were going to college, then you stayed in Bowling Green and went to Kentucky there. What did you major in? Journalism or?
Yes. Yeah, a lot of kids who grow up in Bowling Green don't always necessarily want to go to Western Kentucky University because it's right there in our hometown. But I knew I wanted to do journalism, and they have a fantastic journalism program there. And so, I was like, there was no reason for me to go anywhere else. And so, yeah, I went there and majored in journalism and had a fantastic experience there and worked on the student newspaper and had some great internships. And it was a fantastic experience.
And when you graduated, did you go right into journalism?
I did. I did. I actually my very first job was at the Nashville Banner.
Huh?
Um, the original Nashville Banner. I started as a cub reporter. Most cub reporters start as the night cops reporter, and
Yeah.
so came down to Nashville, night police reporter. My first job lasted 7 weeks, Carl, and that's when the owners of the Banner sold to Gannett, the owners of the Tennessean, and they folded the Banner. So I found out 7 weeks into my brand new job out of college that the paper was folding. And so the Tennessean did hire some of the Banner employees, but I, as one of the brand new
New one.
hires,
Yeah.
was not one of those. So from there, I left Nashville. So my first stint in Nashville was pretty short, but went on to work at some other daily newspapers. I think from there, I went up to the Lexington Herald Leader up in Kentucky. And like I said, spent about a decade in daily newspapers as a reporter before finally coming back to Nashville to join the Nashville Business Journal in
And
2000.
when you were a daily reporter with these other publications, were you covering what, business or everything?
So like I said, I did a variety of things before I did get into business reporting. I did some community reporting, did some education reporting, but got into business reporting actually when I was up in Michigan, and was covering General Motors, covering kind of the manufacturing sector, and was living in Lansing, Michigan. And at the time, General Motors was the largest private employer in Lansing, Michigan, and of course had a tremendous impact on that community, being, the largest private employer, and was just sort of fascinated by that and just the role that that company had in the community, in many different ways. And so that sort of did launch my interest in business reporting. Also did some business reporting down in Florida covering the marine industry. Boating is a multi-billion-dollar industry in South Florida. And so I used to joke that, I would go hang out at the docks and call it work. But it was huge business in South Florida. And so spent about half that time doing business reporting in two different states during that time.
And so when you got to the Business Journal, what year was that?
2008.
2008. And what was your first role there?
So I came here, when I came to the Business Journal is when I moved into editing. So I joined the Business Journal as our managing editor, which is sort of like the number two in the newsroom, kind of the daily operations, working with the team on sort of the daily headlines, putting out the daily news report, which at the time was not as robust. We are much more digital forward now than we were 17 years ago, but kind of working on the daily headlines and the news of the day. And so that's when I kind of launched my editing career, was when I first came here.
Okay. And how long did you stay in that position?
Yeah, I think I'm trying to remember the exact years. I think I was in that position for about 4 years, and then I moved into the editor-in-chief role, so led the newsroom for several years after that. I think about 7 before moved into the publisher role in 2019, which is leading the entire operation and sort of the business operations here at the Business Journal. And so have kind of seen all aspects of our business. But spent so I've been here 17 years, spent the first 11 of those leading content, and the last 6 as publisher and president, kind of leading all aspects of the business, including, from content to events to sales and revenue, and kind of overseeing all aspects of the business, and kind of really seeing like how they all play together, how we're successful, how we can grow, and continue to be, sustainable and deliver on our mission to the audience.
Right. How big of an operation is it now? How many employees do you have?
I always say we punch above our weight. We've got about 17 employees. So we're a pretty small operation, but I think we have a pretty large impact.
Yeah.
So,
Well, what do you think the biggest challenge you have? And we mentioned before we came online, we were talking a little bit about the challenges of having a print publication. You're still in print, and you have a strong online presence also. And you mentioned in your first job here in Nashville, the paper folded in about 6 weeks, because I think of just the changing nature of the economy and the industry. What's the greatest challenge for the Business Journal?
Yeah, I think for us right now, I do think one of our greatest challenges is just how to always, continue to stay relevant in a very increasingly fragmented, politicized media landscape. I think, we're a niche publication. We write for the business audience, and I do think that is a strength of ours. We're not trying to be all things to all people. I think more mainstream media are some that have struggled because the way that people consume media is more, niche now. There's so many different places to get news that are very specific. And so we aren't trying to cover everything for everyone. We specifically write to our business audience and focus on what do they need to know, how can we help them provide, local market intelligence for business leaders. And so I think that has been a strength of ours, but we still need to always try to make sure that we are providing them information they can't get anywhere else, so that we can, like I said, stay relevant, stay necessary, and really continue to grow that audience. We are very strong still in print, but we've also been very aggressive with our digital over the last decade, because we know that, business leaders, they need and want information now, because they use the information that we report to make decisions, and they can't wait till our print edition is only weekly. So they can't wait till Friday to make decisions if we know information they might need to know on Tuesday. And so our digital editions come out twice a week. Plus, of course, our website is always being updated. And so we've shifted those two different platforms. They behave very differently. Our print edition is more magazine-like. Our digital is very, breaking news of the day, things you need to know right now. And so we've evolved those two different platforms over the past decade to make sure that they are serving the needs of the audience in different ways. And I think that's a challenge that we continue to talk about all the time, is that I think is just sort of serving that audience, making sure that we continue to grow that audience, expand our reach, because we are a healthy media company. We're healthy, we're profitable, we're growing. That's counter to national trends in our industry, and we want to continue to build on that.
So I would think that one of the interesting things about your job, and one of the advantages that the Business Journal has compared to maybe some other publications around the country, you're located in a really economically dynamic area. I mean, you started during the recession,
right?
But by 2011, 2012, things were taken off in Nashville and really haven't stopped. How has that been, covering Nashville during this last 15 years?
Oh yeah, I've said many times, I think there's no more exciting city in America to be a business journalist than Nashville. Because yes, when I started here in 2008, it was kind of in the Great Recession, and it was a very different city. I remember one of the stories that we were writing about the time was how all the brand new condo buildings in the Gulch were all facing foreclosure. Well, It wasn't but a few years later that those stories were completely different. And now we've had to continue to kind of evolve and almost play triage with the types of stories that we write about, because there's just so much activity and interest in this city. And I just think it's been exciting. It's been fun. We've been in the fortunate position to sort of help tell that story, help shape that story, and sort of point to the issues that matter and help connect those dots for leaders and bring issues to the surface that we know and that the business community cares about, and that they need to be, looking at, and point out issues that maybe they aren't thinking about, that they should be thinking about, that really matter to the growth of the city. But it's been exciting. It is not slow. Like I said, as you and I were talking about, there used to be sort of cycles in the news business where it'd be slow periods, and we haven't seen true slow periods in our newsroom and in our business for many years here in Nashville. And I think that's fun. Reporters like to be busy. They like to always be running and chasing stories, and there is no shortage of stories to chase in this city.
Yeah. Well, it seems like at least once a week, there's an announcement of a new building or
Yeah.
a relocation or something's going on.
Oh, yes.
What this past year, or however you want to define it, calendar year or academic year going out, what have been the big stories?
Yeah, I mean, top of mind, some of the biggest stories this year, certainly, the Pinnacle Bank merger. That's a huge story, I think, for Nashville. It's Nashville's largest homegrown bank. We've chronicled the Pinnacle story since the beginning. It's been a fascinating story. And so that merger with Synovus out of Atlanta, I think, is a huge story for Nashville. The Elon Musk Boring Company, it's been a big story this year. Sort of that company coming into Nashville for its second project is I think a huge story, and is continuing, something we're continuing to write about and will play out in the months and years ahead. And then also, speaking of the world's richest men, Larry Ellison and Oracle also is another big story for Nashville. Obviously that broke last year, but this year they've continued to make progress on their world headquarter campus on the East Bank. Filed some new permits this year, continuing to kind of push forward on that campus. So that's something we've paid a lot of attention to this year as well. There's been some uncertainty in the economy this year that we paid a lot of attention to, and that's led to some, the local real estate market has seen some sort of distressed sales with some office towers, but some of those are being converted into hotels, which speaks to the continued strength of our tourism engine. That's been a big story for us this year. And another one that I think we've paid attention to, it's not necessarily a typical business story what you think about, but it has huge interest or impact on the business community. So we watch it from a different lens, is just sort of this return of tension between city and state leaders. We've seen that in Nashville. You're quite familiar with it from your former roles. But there was sort of a difference in that a year ago, and I think there was more progress being made there with city and state leaders working together. And then this year, there's been some more tension that's been reintroduced. And I think the business community strongly wants those two, those two entities to work together, because it helps move things forward. And so that's been something that we've paid attention to because of the impact it can have on economic development and other business initiatives. And so that's something that we've paid attention to a lot this year as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So would you still, I mean, there's been the political uncertainty for 2 years really around the state issue,
Right.
which is hard to determine how that affects the economy, but it brings in instability, and it's not a positive, I would say. And there's been some real estate, I mean, things cannot continue always to go up and up and up. But would you still say the economic climate in Nashville is still better than average or certainly hot still?
Right. I would. I mean, I think that Nashville is still a growth, it's still a growth market. We're still seeing, companies coming here, investors coming here, people coming here. And so, I mean, it's still a growth market. We're still seeing, outpacing other cities across the country. I don't think it's growing quite as fast in certain areas as it was a few years ago, but um, it's not going in the opposite direction. And so I do think that comparatively speaking, that yes, Nashville is still a growth market, that the economy still is largely positive, but yes, there is certainly uncertainty economically, politically, and uncertainty does sometimes slow things down and creates questions. We've seen it in some industries more than others, and that will play out more and more in the next couple of years. But we don't see a huge shift for Nashville that all of a sudden, Nashville is not going to be, continuing to show up on all the different lists that come out about
Right.
hot city for this or hot city for that. And so I do think that, Nashville continues to be a high growth city. Yes.
What's your thoughts about regionalism as number one, as a head, a publisher of a business journal and appealing to a broader audience, and then for Nashville's future? I mean, the growth in Nashville has maybe slowed down a little bit in terms of population increase, but what's going on in the surrounding counties, the growth of Clarksville, Murfreesboro, I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
How does that affect your job, and what do you see in the future for that for Middle Tennessee?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. There's actually population growth. There's more growth in the ring counties right now than there is in Davidson County. And I think it's just sort of as the people moving further out, et cetera. And so, from our perspective, we are putting putting even more emphasis on our coverage in some of those counties than we perhaps did in years past. I think it was 3 years ago, we added a position specifically to cover this regional growth and to write more stories and to put more emphasis on some of those other counties than we have in the past, because there's so much growth happening there. And I do think that there's a variety of reasons for that growth, and it does continue to call for the need for more, like you said, more regional cooperation, collaboration, et cetera, from everything to, transportation, infrastructure, housing, et cetera, workforce, because there's a lot of different factors that are driving growth in those counties, and it puts pressure on different resources that are going to have to be addressed, and they can't always be addressed just by Nashville-Davidson County. Need a more collaborative regional approach. Transportation is certainly one of them, but there's other other infrastructure type things as well that probably need more regional conversation as well.
Right. Well, let's switch gears a little bit. This is the World Affairs Council, and so we have a focus on international things. And Nashville is, I think, an international city and becoming increasingly so. How important in your mind is international business to Nashville right now? And what do you see in the future?
I think it's incredibly important, and it continues to grow. I would say, kind of that, compare it to, building that economic base in Nashville is similar to, building an investment portfolio, and that diversity pays. You want diverse companies here from all different areas. I think it just helps with our economy. I was looking at a statistic that the Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce has, that there's more than 340 plus foreign-owned companies in Nashville, representing 26 countries around the world and employing more than 56,000 people. And so there is a large number of foreign-owned companies already here. That number continues to grow. So I think it's increasingly important, certainly in the number of companies here, but you see it in lots of other different areas of the city as well, from tourism to music to sports, to the airport there, and we can get into all those different areas, but I do think that there is a large growth and international presence in a lot of different areas of the business community and across the city.
Yeah. And what do you think what can the city do, or what can the business community do to make Nashville even more appealing as a place for international business?
Well, I mean, I think, many of the reasons that international business is attracted to Nashville are some of the same reasons that any business is attracted to Nashville. The things that, we've talked about for many years, it is a pro-business climate. We have low taxes. We have business-friendly policies here. We are still, I mean, this is all relative, of course, but we still have cost advantages here. Central location on, diverse mix of industries, concentration of universities. I mean, all the things that, we know that makes Nashville attractive to business in general, I do think also makes us attractive to international companies. Our population is increasingly diverse and international. Of course, we're home to really large Hispanic and Asian and Middle Eastern and Kurdish populations. So I think that also makes us attractive. We're a big export state. I think the latest list I saw was from 24, 17th in the nation in terms of exports.
Right.
So all these different factors continue to make us attractive, I think, to international companies. The one thing that you didn't quite phrase the question this way, but in terms of like what's missing, the one thing that we hear the most and continue to hear the most in terms of what we need on the international front is that nonstop flight to Asia.
Right.
Businesses still want that. They still talk about it, especially to Seoul or Tokyo. Certainly does the airport CEO, Doug Crulin, and his team are well aware of this. Conversations are happening. The airport currently doesn't have a runway long enough to accommodate planes that large that can make that flight. But I imagine that conversations are happening for the future. I know that's the one thing that I hear a lot about, that we still hear, when are we going to get that nonstop flight to Asia? But the airport growth is something that we've seen a lot in recent years, that I certainly think would help with more international business. The airport's actively courting international flights. Just this summer, they voted to increase incentives to get even more of these connections. In the past year, they added Ireland and Iceland nonstop flights. Of course, it was pre-pandemic 2018, I believe, when they got their first London nonstop flight, and that now is up to, I'm going to get these numbers wrong, I think four flights a week. But they have several now, flights to London. And so they continue to increase that. I know that's a priority for them. And they've seen a significant increase in international travelers coming through the airport. And so the growth of the airport is certainly something that will help us continue to attract not just international travelers, but international companies and businesses, business leaders. That's certainly a priority for them, is their ability to get here and get to other places around the world. And so
Right.
as the airport continues to grow, I think that will help us continue to become a more international business community.
Are you seeing the effect of sort of larger national issues, the tariffs and immigration policy? Is that affecting Nashville's position as international business center or our future?
I mean, I was thinking that, the tariffs have certainly had an impact on, our auto industry, manufacturing and construction industries. I don't know that Nashville is impacted any more than any other city. I don't know that we are, I think it's impacted cities across the country. Obviously we have a lot of when we think of some of the biggest players in our biggest international players here, you think of Otto, Bridgestone, Nissan, Mitsubishi, et cetera. And they certainly have been impacted by tariffs. But I don't know that Nashville specific has had an outsized impact on that. We haven't seen, in terms of new players, new international players coming to the city. We haven't seen a large number of new arrivals recently. It's unclear if there's been an impact, if the tariffs are having an impact on that. There are a few recent new arrivals, but not as many as perhaps there were a few years ago. But I don't know that I can necessarily draw a direct correlation for you to the tariffs for that. But I imagine that there's probably some role being played there.
Do you have any sense, whether if it's the CMA Music Festival or whatever, general tourism, has there been a drop off in international travel to Nashville in the last year?
Tourism's, international tourists are certainly a big, a significant chunk of our tourism here. And country music certainly has a lot of international fans, especially in Europe. So it is a big part of the draw here. And so from the music standpoint, I have not heard that. From the convention standpoint, I think it's had some impact. I don't know that it's had a significant impact here, at least yet.
What, say you're advising the mayor or the council, or what do you think Nashville's priorities need to be now for the next 5 to 10 years?
I think that, we are continuing to grow. And so for me, the priorities are probably similar priorities that, we've had in recent years, but I would continue to say that transportation and infrastructure need to be top priorities, housing affordability, and workforce development. Those three are certainly top of mind for me, because, with our rapid growth, one of the city's most pressing challenges is the increased cost of living. We've seen a tremendous influx of wealth in Greater Nashville, but we've also seen that kind of widening of the wealth gap in the region, kind of that greater divide between the haves and the have-nots. Which is not unusual for fast-growing cities. That's a typical challenge when you have a lot of growth in a short amount of time. But our cost of living used to be a perk for Nashville, but now it's become a really great challenge, which impacts companies' abilities to recruit and retain employees. It can be a greater challenge for residents. It can be a greater strain on city resources, and all of this, if not addressed in meaningful ways, can really have an impact on the city in the coming years. And so I think my advice would be we need to continue, to make these top priorities in the next 5 to 10 years. Affordable housing in areas where the jobs are, flexible, reliable public transportation options, continued focus on higher wage jobs. I just think that is going to continue to help our city grow in sustainable ways and grow in ways that continue to benefit the entire community.
Well, you've been here now, you're not a newcomer, you've been here, you ought to run for mayor, you've been here more than long enough time to do that. What's your favorite thing about Nashville?
Favorite thing about Nashville? I certainly love the food and the music, of course. But thinking about it from the vantage point that I've had at the Business Journal, what I truly love, what I've seen is a tremendous collaborative spirit. And it's funny, when I first moved to Nashville, and people would talk about, oh, Nashville is such a welcoming city and collaborative city. I kind of thought, well, doesn't every city say that?
Yeah.
And every city does say that. But I really I've seen that in the business community here. I've seen that there really are a lot of very civic-minded leaders and organizations here who really do care about this community. Leaders who certainly want to build a successful business, but also want to have a real impact in their community and want to build a successful future for Nashville that is sustainable. And I'm really inspired by many of these leaders, and it's what helps keep me really optimistic that we can find solutions for the challenges that we face. Like I said, there are lots of growth, lots of challenges that come with growth. But this collaboration between leaders that I've seen time and time again, I don't think any challenge can be solved without kind of collaboration from different leaders across different sectors of the city. And I've seen that happen many times over the past 2 decades. And that keeps me optimistic that we'll continue to find those, to find solutions to the challenges that face us. And that's been my favorite thing about being in the city over the past couple of decades.
Good. Well, that's great. I would rank that high up there as one of Nashville's great strengths, that people I think actually do work together and try to find ways to move the city forward. Sometimes are more challenging than others, but we usually get it done. Well, Lori, thank you for taking the time to talk with us, and thank you for the work that you've done to keep our city informed and to make us just a better place to live by doing the important work of journalism. So we definitely appreciate it.
Well, you're very welcome, and thank you for having me today. I've enjoyed the conversation.
Good. Well, thanks. Liani, are we all set?
Yes. Thank you, Lori and Carl, for this exciting conversation about the development of Nashville. The program will be archived and available on the tnwac.org, and will be on September 22nd, which is the coming Monday, at our website. Please check and share with your friends. For our participants, consider becoming members and a donor, supporting the Council to carry out its mission through all programs on global affairs. All our summer-fall 2025 Distinguished Speaker Series is already on our website. Please check the outstanding speakers we prepared for you. Thank you all, and goodbye for now.